It's Mozz, it's Chaz, and we really want to be your friends. Hey, welcome to Jessica Jones, aka the JonesCast. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny, rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz, welcome to the ultimate episode of Jessica Jones, aka Smile, episode 13, directed by Michael Reimer, written by a whole bunch of people this week. Okay, we get a created by credit, of course, to Melissa Rosenberg, a teleplay by credit to Scott Reynolds and Melissa Rosenberg, a story by credit to Jamie King and Scott Reynolds, and a staff writer credit to both Jenna Reback and Jamie King. Oh, what a great team of writers for, and I do say I don't use this term loosely, the ultimate episode of Jessica Jones, aka Smile. Jessica and Luke get help from someone else in the neighborhood. Kilgrave gears up for a major test of powers against Jessica. Such an episode.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of has to be, right?
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Everything comes crashing down now.
Yeah, especially as Counterflix has infected IMDb. Yeah, it's the dang virus my kid put on the computer, and I have to get $40 to get Norton to undo it. Nah, what are you going to do? Yeah, don't let your kids play on computers, folks. That is the moral of that story. So,
yeah.
Oh, man, how does this episode open up? It's been a little while.
Luke is still out.
Luke is still... Oh, so this is the eyeball episode, then. Or was that last episode?
That was the last episode.
Okay, so the last episode featured our eyeball, our extraction of fluids from going along the optic nerve, which honestly was both disturbing and beautiful. But Luke is still out. So this is where Luke is coming to. But before that, so I'm trying to remember exactly where we are here. Patsy comes back, right?
Right. They are in the car where she's driving her to see. She meets up to go find the father, right?
The father? Oh, yes. Okay. So where we are is that Kilgrave has injected himself with the basically with the stem cells from his fetus, which is kind of gross in its own crazy way. But the idea is let's up Kilgrave's power like a millionfold. And this is this great moment of anti-fan annoyance, because every fan watching this show wanted to see Doctor Who in the purple face paint after he comes out of the upgrade.
Right.
You want him to look like the Purple Man. He doesn't. I don't think that's a negative for the story, quite frankly. This was still a fantastic story, even without turning people purple.
Right.
And what we get is this idea that his power has been upgraded. And of course, his desire is to test himself against Jessica to see if now his power is strong enough to break Jessica.
Yeah.
But one of the things I loved about that scene is him saying to his father, where basically the father says there's a 40% chance it's going to increase your power. It's a 60% chance it'll kill you. He asks his father, what do you wish happens? He says, well, I hope it kills you. And, and again, for what it's worth, it does not kill him.
Right.
But Kilgrave takes that moment of killing of his father, wishing him dead, to inflict a punishment upon his father, which we'll get to in a minute. But I actually wanted to do a quick call out to my fellow podcaster on Superconnectivity and the All New Marvel Roundup, because we were discussing today about the Defenders and things, and he came with what I thought was a brilliant idea, which was the Hand we know is bringing back Elektra. But what if they bring back villains for each of the other characters? And for Kilgrave, for Jessica, that would be bringing Kilgrave back. And I was thinking that creates this great possibility of a story for Kilgrave to essentially be under someone else's control, and perhaps even have a somewhat redemptive arc for Kilgrave.
If he comes back, they can make him purple, right?
Well, of course, if he comes back, they can make him purple. Absolutely. And that's even better. An actual purple Kilgrave. Don't know if we're going to get David Tennant to agree to being painted purple, but we'll have to see. He tries to be a bit of a serious actor now. Not for nothing, they couldn't even paint Jeff Goldblum blue for the for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Really? Why not?
I don't know if it was. I'm going to say that was actually the director's choice. I think if you told Jeff Goldblum, oh, by the way, your character's going to be painted blue, he's going to be, do I get paid the same? And he's going to say, okay, I am absolutely fine with being painted blue. Because I am Jeff Goldblum, and I will suffer for my art, but more importantly, I will get paid for this, right?
I'm a Goldblum fan. I'm really excited about it. I think that character is going to be really one of the highlights of the film.
Oh, honestly, yes. Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster is going to be. My only worry is that he's going to be underutilized. That is. I mean, Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster. Although what I'll say is that whatever poor sap got cast as the Grandmaster in the cartoons up until now, I hope you've enjoyed your run, but they're going to be hiring Jeff Goldblum to do that role from now on, or at least they're going to be demanding you do a Jeff Goldblum impression, because he is going to dominate that character. Much in the same way that I think that, Benicio del Toro really gave such an obsessive quality to the Collector that I think has gotten played out even in the books now, when you see the Collector being far more petty in his collection. It's very interesting. If you read the current Unworthy Thor, it's a very different take on the Collector than we've ever seen before.
And you're saying the Collector from Guardians was a way better iteration of the character?
I don't know if it was a better, but it certainly was a more influential. And I think that you're getting a much more... And actually, I think that they're even sort of taking it a step beyond what Benicio del Toro did, and making him much more evil in the books now. Before, I've always felt the Collector was essentially just, the uber nerd who wanted to have his perfect collection. Now it's even less about collection than it is about just being the last guy, to have it. So it's like he could have the last rhino, or he could shoot the last rhino. It makes no difference to him. He just wants to be the last person who gets to shoot a rhino. You know? So that's a very different take on him, but I do think that's partially informed by the way Benicio del Toro did play that character in a very brilliant way in the original Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm really looking forward to Jeff Goldblum in this. And we're going to get maybe even a sibling interaction between Benicio and Jeff Goldblum, and that'll be really a lot of fun.
Yeah, because they're like godlike creatures, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they are essentially. I mean, they are the oldest creatures in the universe. And because of that, they are
just more adept at handling the universe, I guess.
Yeah. John, go in your room now. Go in the room now, please, John. John!
Hello?
Go in the room, please. Yeah, I'm here. Yes. So, so I mean that's very good. But let's get back to the actual story we're telling here, which is that just one second. John, put it back on TV. Put it back on to whatever you guys were watching so that Tristan can watch it. Please. Just push go back and push play. John, just put it back on. I'm getting very sick of this. Okay, anyway, so where was I? So, yeah.
I think she leaves Claire in charge of Luke in her apartment so she can, I think she's going to meet up with Patsy at that point, right?
Yes, so she meets up with Patsy. And and in this time, Jessica has figured out where Kilgrave is, and he goes to the apartment and finds them cutting up the father to eradicate him from the world. Yeah. Oh God.
All of him.
Yes. Oh, that was crazy. I mean, the whole thing was crazy. There's no short answer to it. It was a crazy, crazy scene.
Yeah.
And of course, Jessica calls Hogarth to say, here's this new client that you're going to cover pro bono. Although not for nothing, this guy was certainly wealthy enough to afford Hogarth. So I don't know if she's going to do the pro bono or not. But either way, he's got a good lawyer. And we start to move towards our great denouement. Luke comes out of his coma and goes off to wander the earth.
Right. Here, what's interesting is she makes it a point to let him find the information that she's been arrested. And so he leaves thinking that, doesn't he say he's going to go bust her out, though? Or then he gives up on it?
Yeah.
That's what she wanted? Or something?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. That essentially he's not going to get involved.
Right.
Which is honestly a good thing because not for nothing, Jessica has a plan. And that Jessica has a plan is very important. And I really, honestly think that the plan we get is so brilliant. Because they do decide, so we know where she's supposed to meet Kilgrave. Because Kilgrave calls her.
Right.
And Jessica goes to meet him. Or at least Kilgrave thinks that.
Right.
Because we have someone walk in with the hoodie on, walking towards them. And
how could it not be her?
Yeah, how could it not be? Except it's not, and we get our big reveal. And who is it?
Was it Patsy? I forget.
Yeah, it's Patsy! And that's, to me, that was like the best moment in the whole series, just because you do this great callback to the theme song. Oh. It's Patsy, it's Patsy. And it's Kilgrave saying, it's Patsy! And that's brilliant. That's beautiful. There's no two ways about it. And I love that aspect of it. So it is, in fact, Patsy. And, and she is wearing her headphones. So she can't hear Kilgrave ordering her.
Right.
And then Jessica comes out, and then a bunch of cops start shooting up the place.
Yeah.
And it is chaos. And then they get out, and Kilgrave has all these fail-safes, what he thinks of as his fail-safes. Yeah. They get out on the dock, and everyone starts trying to kill each other. Till they can get to a point of denouement. In which Kilgrave knows, well, at least he thinks he can't control Jessica. He thinks his power hasn't been up to that point. But he has Jessica and her there. And he has Jessica and Patsy there. And he essentially tells Patsy to come to him.
Yeah, because he's just so hell-bent on just hurting Jessica. Yeah. And that's the only thing that matters to him. So it's just like it's killing him that he's just trying to find a way to do that.
Yes.
And that's she doesn't seem to care about much. And then, it's like, okay, the one thing you do care about, I'll just take that.
Exactly. And what you see with Jessica is this brilliant play where none of us are sure if Kilgrave's powers are working on her.
Yeah.
And it is an amazing moment because you essentially have Kilgrave holding Patsy, and Patsy is in his thrall 100%. But Jessica isn't moving against him. Yeah. And you see Kilgrave starting to go, wait, is it working? Do I now have power over Jessica? And then what is my next move? Because honestly, that's the thing that's most difficult for him. He's like, oh my goodness, I could have her, or do I want to just leave her in the lurch? What do I want? And of course, oh goodness, there's this.
I thought it was more of like, he always really, that's what he wanted, but as you do as a person, you make justifications to be able to live with what you are given, not necessarily what you want. So you make up justifications for yourself, which is what he was doing. But the moment the possibility was there that he could actually have that, all the hatred and everything went away.
Oh, yeah.
Because the hatred really wasn't ever directed at her. It was only directed at himself. And all he really ever wanted was a mirror that he could look into and not see a terrible person.
Yeah. Well, that's a great analysis. I love that. Yeah, I mean, it is a very fascinating question. What is Kilgrave's motivations through any of this? One thing I think about Kilgrave is that he does, I think at the end of the day, he wants to be able to be loved.
Yes.
And I think the problem is that he knows he is incapable of being loved. It isn't even that he's incapable of love. It's that no one would really ever love Kilgrave because he is, at the end of the day, a psychotic rapist and murderer, And of course, that's the thing. You say, oh, I suppose in your mind I'll be raping her every time when he talks about what he's going to do to Patsy going forward. And it's like, yeah, because you will be, Yeah. It's like, it's not like there's really this differentiation here. It's very clearly what you are looking to do. Yeah. And that is honestly, this series comes to such an amazing conclusion.
Yeah.
That you kind of understand why Iron Fist is getting judged so harshly.
Yeah.
Although to be fair, this is what I always say is that Power Man got there was a lot of negative flack. Not to be political about it, but I do think that there was a curve, and just to give you a great definition of white privilege here, there was a curve given to both Jessica and Luke that they were graded on that maybe Iron Fist didn't get that curve because it is not a show that is breaking new ground. But you know what? The idea that you're going to be upset because you didn't get the curve for not breaking new ground is kind of ridiculous because, well, you didn't break new ground. It's not like you were making a new and innovative and interesting idea that you had to experiment with. It's like, no, you had a really straightforward idea, and so we're going to judge you a bit harsher for that because we've already seen the white guy with superpowers.
Right. And also, personally, I think it's a completely different genre of Netflix show. Even like if you want to subdivide it further as different genres of Marvel Netflix shows, I'm comfortable with making that distinction because it is a different kind of show. It's not a heavy, brooding kind of show that deals with real life issues. It's a topical, fun show about, cool kung fu. And, and even within that world, I think they're able to find, I think where that show works is in the interpersonal conversations between people. I think the acting is good, and I think the chemistry between people is good enough that I'm able to overlook a lot of the shortcomings.
Oh, no. And actually, I'm inclined to agree. I actually think it's a much better show than it gets credit for. I do see where the flaws come in. And, honestly, the biggest flaws I see in it are in editing. I really don't like who's editing it because he does a lot of jumpy cuts. And I think that the jumpy cuts are really... And we'll talk about this more when we get to the Ironcast in a few minutes. Because, ironically, this probably won't air until after we've finished Ironcast. So, but just so you know, we are recording both Jessica Jones and Ironcast at about the same time. We're finishing Jessica Jones as we're starting Ironcast. So I'm 2 episodes into Ironcast, and, it's a good show, but I do see the weaknesses. But like I said, most of the weaknesses I find are so technical. But of course, in a visual genre, and this is sort of one of these moments where you realize how important those technical qualities are. And I kind of compare it to comic books, where there are artists who, when they're inked well, are called geniuses, and when they're inked poorly, are called, posers. And there's so often that I think that, there are artists, because of course, that's an interesting point about comic books, is that usually there is an artist, the person who does the pencils, and an inker, who's the person who adds the inks on the pencils. And then, of course, there's a third person on top of that, the colorist. And you often think of the colorist and the inker, as the tracer and the guy who colors inside the lines.
Right.
But it is so often when you're watching it that you realize how important these technical aspects of storytelling are. Because in a show like Jessica Jones or Luke Cage or moving into Iron Fist, you can see how tonally different choices like music and editing pace and how you define a cut and how you define any scene. One of the things I honestly feel about Iron Fist is that they never linger on a scene. They never take it like, where you have 2 people talking more than one take. It's like one person talks and then we cut to the next person talking.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I've only watched 2 episodes so far, but that's how I feel about it. And I do feel that, especially with Jessica Jones, you get these longer takes. You get these things where there's this whole conversation between 2 people, and we see both of them.
Right. I wonder if that's a purposeful device used to build, anticipation. Like you keep wanting something you don't get, in a sense, In
Iron Fist or in
Iron Fist.
In Iron Fist? Possibly. When we get to the second episode, there's a couple little things, although honestly, it was kind of an age test for me, where I was thinking I was seeing something that was like weird, and I said, oh, wait, no, this actually... Okay, that makes perfect sense. I'm just so old, I can think of continuity errors that don't exist here for these people. It's important to remember that Iron Fist went into the mountains 15 years ago, and we're already in 2016, which means that the entire Iron Fist story takes place within this millennia. And if you are us people who lived over 2 millennia, what we think of as continuity is not really continuity for a lot of people out there. So, but getting back to Jessica Jones and getting back to this idea about having this lingering cut and this conversation, because as I've said, this entire series comes down to this conversation between Jessica and Patsy and Kevin.
Yeah.
We can call him Kilgrave, we can call him Kevin, whatever you want, but they're sitting here and they're having this conversation. And basically, and the beauty of it is, there's this scene earlier where they're trying to think of the code word that Jessica can give to Patsy to let her know she's not under control.
Right.
And it has to be something Jessica would never say. And what is the word that Jessica would never, ever say?
I love you, right?
Exactly. And in the subtlety of the direction and the presentation of this scene, when Kilgrave directs her to say, "Tell me you love me," and then she turns her eyes to Patsy and says, "I love you." It was such a brilliant moment.
Yeah.
Because it is her both saying, "I'm not under control," but also a scene that is honestly a point where you could imagine, even if she was under control, told to say "I love you," turning to Patsy to say that she loved her in that final moment of freedom, or of partial freedom, you know?
Yeah.
And that is what is so beautiful about that, is even though we know that's the code word, even though we see her turning to Patsy, it's really honestly an easily digested idea that she's not free. And that is what makes it so powerful. You know, and I think that is the thing about Jessica Jones, is there are so many moments that we think we know what's going on, even when we know what's going on, but we're not 100% sure.
Right.
We walk into this and we're like, "Oh no, she's still free. She's not really under his control." But then you're like, "Where is she? Is she really free?" You know?
Because the implications then become, are we watching something really that dark? Because is this what's about to happen? Are we watching, like, you ever see that movie Casino?
Oh yeah, I love
And
Casino.
you remember that scene in the cornfields where they're making Joe Pesci watch while they beat his brother to death?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the darkest things I've ever seen, and this reminded me of that sort of feeling of helplessness, where somebody you love is going to be tortured and there's nothing you can do about it, and it's such a gut-wrenching feeling.
Oh yeah. See, when you mentioned Casino, I'm actually just thinking of the end of it, where the car, where Al Pacino's character gets in the car, and it blows up. And you know what's ironic about that, and it's actually not. I mean, it's actually, because this is based on a real story, and this is actually a whole thing. But that scene, when I watch it, it actually always reminds me of my favorite Charles Bronson film, The Mechanic. Which, if you ever see the original Mechanic, has such a great ending.
Really?
Oh, the original Mechanic. I mean, I really haven't seen the second Mechanic, so I can't really speak to it. But the original Mechanic has such a brilliant M. Night Shyamalanian twist without being a cop-out that makes you go, oh, I just love that, you know? And essentially what happens in that, I mean, not to give it away, but basically you think a guy is dead and then the car blows up. Or you think the guy got away with it and then the car blows up, and that's how you end The Mechanic. It's like, oh shoot, you know, there is no protagonist, is there? And so in that way you do get this parallel with Casino, because of course in Casino, Al Pacino gets in the car blows up.
Yeah.
But then you get that, but actually there was this little thing you didn't realize, that nobody realizes, that there's this extra plate on this car I was driving, which is just such a random bit of trivia that is probably true, because I know that Chryslers have always had a problem, and a lot of cars actually have this problem with the driver's side steel plate wearing away from salt exposure. So the need to put that extra plate in there is a very real thing. And some cars, they put it on when they figure this is a car someone's going to be driving for a while. This is an investment car, like a nice car a gangster might drive, versus, you know, a Dodge Omni, which, you know, quite frankly, hey, if you get to sell this car, God bless you.
Right.
Dodge Omnis are always burning that hole, and you'll see that hole in a lot of cars, especially if you go buy a car from the Northeast. Anyway, and that's where we're at with Kilgrave and Jessica, where Jessica is in that moment clearly under his control.
Yeah.
And then she reaches out, and you remember, actually, you don't have control over me. And if you forgot, I have superhuman strength.
Yeah.
And she grabs his jaw so he can't control anyone. and then snaps his neck.
Mm.
And you know what is brilliant about that? Is that first she makes sure he can't talk before she snaps his neck. Because there was an earlier point that was made, which was that if we kill Kilgrave, does that actually break his spell?
Right.
Because they don't know. But they know if his spell has already been put on hold and we kill him now, we're okay. And that is, like I said, it is all these subtle things that you get in this denouement, the final episode of Jessica Jones. And again, I'm going to go back and say there was a lot in the start of Jessica Jones that was kind of slow. We had episodes that were kind of filler. So I'm not going to sit here and judge Iron Fist based on what I've heard about the first 6 episodes. Because I know that Jessica Jones, really, my most memorable moments from Jessica Jones are all in the last half of the season. From the eyeball, honestly, the eyeball scene, that is like, if you ever want to just experience how awesome Claire Temple is, it is the eyeball scene. You know? And, you know, up until this moment, there's so much strength in the last half of Jessica Jones that overshadows that first half, that makes you go, oh, you know what? You know, if the show had ended more patly earlier, I probably wouldn't think it was as great as it was. And
I mean, I don't know. I think it was balanced really well because I didn't really mind any of the earlier episodes. I thought they did a really good job of building up why you're supposed to care about any of the things that are happening towards the end of the show. I don't know. I really relished every second of it. It was just so interesting and so intriguing. There was so much mystery surrounding everything that it kept me strung along, happily so, every time.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not gonna argue that because honestly, I think you're largely right. I think that honestly, I think Jessica Jones was probably one of the best written shows that they've done.
Yeah.
I think it probably had to be. You know, it's the Hillary Clinton rule. You know, if you want to be the first woman to be president, it doesn't matter if you're running against an idiot. You've got to be 4 times as good as the guy who was actually good at the job, you know? And that is the truth of it, is that, you know, this show had to be great, and it stood up and hit it right out of the park.
Yeah.
And honestly, oh man. So after Kilgrave is dead, we get Hogarth defending Jessica.
Yeah.
And you know what I thought was very interesting in this?
What?
The DA knows about Kilgrave.
Right.
Because the DA already signed the release for Hope.
Right.
So that Hogarth has to come in here and then spin a plausible story. It's such a great bit about how people react to, you know,
crazy stories.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know what? You know, we used to do the Gamma Cast, you and me together.
Yeah.
And we always used to make the point about how no one could ever put together that David Banner was the Hulk. And I think a big part of that is just the fact that, yeah, it's hard to put David Banner and the Hulk together because it is such an out there concept that no one is going to accept it.
Right.
And you have to sort of help someone build a plausible deniability.
Yeah.
You have to let them say, okay, I'm not going to say you have to admit this thing that you already know is true because you experienced it.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to give you this other narrative that you're going to say it's plausible enough that you can walk away from all this.
Right.
And that, when we eventually get to Daredevil, which we're going to try to do soon enough, we actually get to Daredevil, and we get about how bad of a lawyer Matt Murdock is. You really realize how good of a lawyer Hogarth is here.
Yeah, I mean, they're not even in the same league.
Yeah, well, that's why Hogarth has the big fancy office, a mistress and a wife. And, basically, Daredevil's out getting punched every night.
Right.
But then again, that's because that's what Daredevil always wanted, was just to be punched for a living.
Yeah, but I think also Hogarth is so good, but I don't think there's a way to be that good of a lawyer and still be good. You know, I think that's what's held Matt Murdock back.
Oh yeah,
Is
well no, yes, because yeah, you have to, you know what it is of course to be a lawyer. To be a lawyer, you have to separate the law from justice,
right.
and that's on both sides of the equation. You know, if you are a prosecutor, you have to separate the law from justice because your job isn't necessarily to. Because the truth is, nobody can know what justice is.
Hmm.
You know, just to give you a great point about Marvel vs. DC, Marvel would never have a team called the Justice League because that
Hmm.
is too presumptive that you know what justice is.
Hmm.
You know, that's just because you're Superman or Batman, you're the person who knows what justice is. You know, that you get to decide who is the right and who is wrong in any moment just because you're the most powerful or the most smart or the most whatever. No, justice is something so much more complex. And that is why someone like Hogarth is good because in the end, in order to actually achieve justice, you can't just have lawful good characters. You have to have people that are who say, you know, there is a great episode of Matlock that I don't even remember it, but it's just this one scene where Matlock talks to some kid who he's been hired to defend.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically says, look, there's like 3 types of cases I take. There are cases I take because someone asks me because that's a favor to a friend.
Right.
And he says, and there's cases that I take because someone pays me. And I'm not going to say I'm mad about that because that's my job, you know? Which basically is Matlock saying, you don't get to see this in the TV show, but I get murderers off all the freaking time, you know? If OJ kills another wife, he's calling me, is what Matlock is basically saying there. And then he says, and there are times when I take a case because the person is innocent. And those are the ones you get to see on TV, kids.
Yeah.
And
No, so I mean, my point is simply that I'm trying to make excuses for why he's such a bad lawyer. You know,
yeah.
because in my opinion, that's my favorite Netflix show so far. Luke Cage was good, Jessica Jones was great, but I think Daredevil was leaps and bounds above both of them.
Yeah, well, and of course, because Daredevil is a guy who is at his core good.
Yeah.
And of course, and here's what I'm going to tell you: he's good, but he also doesn't think he's good. And that's the strength of Daredevil, is that he is always making the right choice, but thank you, Catholic guilt. Every choice he makes, he second guesses. Every choice he makes, he wonders, am I really making the right choice, or am I just making the convenient or the easy choice?
Yeah.
And that is what makes Daredevil a really fantastic series. And that is why it was the first one Netflix did. That is why it was strong. I think that Jessica Jones hits it out of the park too. I mean, honestly, I prefer Jessica Jones over Daredevil just because I like the idea of people dealing with superheroism in a non-superheroic way.
Yeah.
I think to me the idea that you're going to put on the tights, well, I understand why it's an attractive option. I also see how it is in its own way a very self-aggrandizing option.
I don't know, because I think there is merit to the argument that, the structure that is in place is flawed by design. So the only way to fight it is to break the structure, and you can't do that working within the structure. So at least, I obviously you fall into the pitfall of drawing parallels between that and our world, but I think it's important to recognize that in their world, it's a little different. The answers are a little bit more easy. They're not as gray area, because it is a fiction. It's a comic book,
Well, yeah.
So,
and for what it's worth, for those people of a certain age who read the Marvel Universe, the handbook to the Marvel Universe, you actually know that the idea of mass vigilantism was a well-established concept in the Marvel Universe by the time you get the Age of Heroes. That people, because it goes back to the Old West and these cowboys who were traveling around putting on masks and being vigilantes, that this was this established trope. And, so that when Spider-Man first puts on his mask, ironically to be an entertainer, it is much less shocking when he goes to vigilantism because people have already established the idea that there are vigilantes, going back to Captain America. And of course, that's of course one of the great things about the Fantastic Four is that the Fantastic Four never wore masks. And Kirby originally drew them with masks. We don't know who decided not to give them masks, but they wound up not having masks. But there are some early art of the Fantastic Four all wearing masks, which was the trope. And to me, because I always do want to default to Stan as the differentiator, I think Stan was the guy who said, well, why are they wearing masks? Maybe they shouldn't wear masks. Now, of course, Kirby had already created characters who didn't wear masks, which were the Challengers of the Unknown, which everyone always says is the parallel to this Fantastic Four. But I kind of, there's a great background. Honestly, I always just say Lee and Kirby were just a great team. And whoever did what, I think what they created together was always better than what either of them ever created alone. I don't think Stan Lee is going to sit there and say, oh, no, I did everything on my own. I think if I told him, I think what you and Kirby did together was probably some of your best stuff, he's going to say, yes, me and Kirby work great together. He maybe thinks it's 60-40. Other people may think it's, 70-30 for Kirby. I'm going to say it's 50-50. I'm going to say that a team is a team.
Yeah.
And it's like, honestly, Mozz, it's like when I look at, because, when I think about me and Phil podcasting, when I think about you and me, Phil, podcasting, when I think about me and Rosemary podcasting over on GammaCast, I honestly feel there is this real 50-50. Maybe I'm the big loud guy in the room, but honestly, I think that my loudness is always complemented by the person I'm talking to.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and so Kilgrave dead. Jessica Jones. I'm sorry.
And I love the finality of it too, the immediacy of it. There was no sort of trancing around the subject. And it's funny. It's similar to the previous two times they almost got him. When at first Simpson was like, "No, I gotta make the move. He just goes and does it, and they almost catch him. And the second time, Jessica decides, boom, I'm just going to get him, and she drugs him again. But this time she knew none of that, and she came to terms with the realization that she had to kill him.
Yeah.
She did it in that same fashion.
And, of course, by that point, and that of course, is the point of it, by that point, Hope Schlottman is already dead.
Yeah.
And that is the crux of that thing, is that Jessica didn't kill Kilgrave because he had to save Hope. She had to save Hope. And when Hope was truly free by being dead, then she could kill Kilgrave. And the only reason she didn't kill Kilgrave in the restaurant was because everybody else was about to die.
Yeah.
It's like Kilgrave had set that up because, Kilgrave was planning ahead. Jessica was planning ahead. Kilgrave won that round. But the fact of the matter is that once Hope was free, it was really just a matter of time before Jessica was going to kill Kilgrave. And that's what happens. Now, maybe Kilgrave comes back. David Tennant had said he'll happily come back. And like I said, I think Phil really hit on a great idea, which is the idea of bring Kilgrave back by the hand and have him have to deal with being now controlled by someone else. Yes, he's back to life, and yes, he has his powers, but he is no longer free. And have him feel what it's like to have someone else in your mind.
Yeah.
And how that changes his story entirely is a very amazing thing. And you could even do a great Dr. Smith arc in there, about a man who is evil, but who somehow finds a way to at least be human. To turn from, not from turn from evil to good, but turn from monster to human. You know, that is the greatest arc. I honestly, I think turning evil to good is it's an arc, but it's such a big arc you never really get it. But seeing that incremental just monster to being just a human is such a more powerful arc when you go from someone who is totally evil to saying, okay, I actually get some of this about not killing people, and honestly, I just need to have at least one good mark on my record. I think that incremental shift from 0 to 1 is so much more important than 0 to infinity. You know?
Yeah.
Because that 0 to 1 is essentially 0 to infinity, but you get to watch it along the way.
Huh.
But
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fascinating. It'll be wonderful. I mean, I think Defenders is going to be good. And for any complaints about Iron Fist that we may get, you know, they said early on, Iron Fist's story completes in the Defenders. So we get the start in Iron Fist. So it's important not to think of it even as a 13-episode arc. It's probably a 26-episode arc for Iron Fist. And that makes sense when you consider that most of Iron Fist's characterization in the comic books are through the filter of him being a part of this integration of this superhuman society of him and Power Man. So we have to see where we go from there. Okay, Mozz, any final thoughts on this episode or this series in total?
No, just that I thought it was one of the best things out in a long while. I thought it was really, really good.
Yes, and I'm inclined to agree. And, you know, I don't want to say I have negativity towards Iron Fist, because I really don't. I just see the flaws, and I know it is a flawed product, but I do think it's actually still pretty good. And Jessica Jones just highlights how minor flaws in your storytelling can really destroy your story. You know, because, I mean, that's the thing, is like, if Jessica Jones had gotten lipstick on her teeth, maybe we wouldn't be talking about how great it was. But the fact of the matter is, because they hit their beats just right, you really achieve. And of course, you know, for Iron Fist, the problem is that because he's coming off of these really great have to hit our beats each and every time, when he's going there and maybe he's not hitting his beats quite the same way, that's causing the negativity. But we'll get to that when we talk to that on the Iron Cast. Me and Mozz later on tonight, or earlier than now, depending on when Rob posts all this. Okay, so Mozz, where can folks find you if they want to talk Iron Fist or Jessica Jones or Daredevil or anything else with you?
Oh, they can reach me on my email at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook at Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
Okay, and of course you can always follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet The Incredible Hulk, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Powerless, if they ever bring it back, and whatever show I dang well feel like. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsscr. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. And if you're not one of these hip young kids on the Twitters, write to me in that good old-fashioned email way, just like we do at Pepperidge Farms, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at thegmail.com. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this final episode of the AKA JonesCast. Jessica gets another season, we'll be back. If not, join us in Ironcast and the Defenders Cast, which we haven't named yet. I'm leaning towards Don't Get Defensive. It's the Defenders Cast. But we'll see how it plays out. Good night.